It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast, the home of chicken burgers and cookie butter.
Please do not combine these two things directly.
Yeah, exactly.
That might be pretty good. I mean, I taste it anyways, but...
Can you tell we've been away for a bit? My name's Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everyone.
I won't even ask. I just hope everybody out there is doing okay.
Mm-hmm. So do we.
Yes.
So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
I don't think you
That's
could have
not being
said
sick.
that any more hesitantly, but yeah.
Yeah. My corner of the galaxy is coated in Lysol right now. Remember when they came to get E.T. and they like tinted the whole house off? I'm considering that right now.
Just nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
That's right.
Right. Oh man, light a match. Ooh, well, don't, because the whole house is coated.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, this is not a good
Now
idea.
I have a puzzling question.
Uh-oh.
No, go ahead. It's just weird.
I haven't done anything. I've slept. I've watched a lot of black and white TV. I could probably recite Father's Knows Best to you right now. So, yeah, I also caught up on The Walking Dead, and I found out I didn't miss anything.
I didn't realize you were behind on Walking Dead.
Yeah, I quit watching after Carl died, because to me it was kind of like,
Okay, I knew you had stopped watching then, but I thought you had caught up since. Maybe I was just mistaken.
I tried. It's kind of been one of those things. I want to get back into it because I heard that Jeffrey Dean Morgan is doing really good over there, and so I went to check it out, and it's like, he's doing really good over there, but that's about the only thing that's going good over there. And he was the villain at one point, so that should tell you how this show's going, I think maybe I heard everything's kind of a fog. This is the last season, and over the Christmas holiday and everything else, Amazon offered quite a few channels for 99 cents for like 3 or 4 months, and AMC was one of those. So like I said, it was free. Well, it wasn't free, but it was cheap. But then I asked you guys on Discord for black and white TV shows, and almost everything you guys named off was on Tubi, and we've thrown that name around quite a bit on this show. Tubi's free, and it's kind of like, wow, I'm paying for all these channels, and I've been watching this free one for the last 2 weeks. So
It's something to think about when you get to where you can start thinking clearly again.
Right. Well, I for a long time wanted to cut Netflix off, but I have too many people who use my password.
You're not not supposed to admit that.
This is we're recording this, you know.
Well, I mean, it's family.
Don't upset the masses.
It's all family, and it just in the house alone, there's like 4 people that use it, so it's kind of like, I don't like it. I usually can't find what I'm looking for to watch on it, and I really think here lately, especially being sick, I've spent most of my time on Amazon, so.
So Phyllis happy that you found Tubi, huh?
Right.
I think he's gonna be happier when she cuts off $15 a month for Netflix. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, they just have you guys noticed that it seemed like Netflix hit its prime. I hate to say prime, with Prime Video, but they used to put out a lot of good stuff. But it seems like here lately it's just been kind of, a lot of the good shows they had that were original to Netflix, they canceled them. So it's like, meh.
That's the thing I don't understand is, it seems like a lot of the shows that they've had has been, I mean, I don't know how they handle ratings nowadays, especially for streaming services, but they had a lot of shows that had a lot of positive feedback and all that, and it's like after 3 seasons they say, you know what, this thing's done, we're going to kill it and move on. And it's like, why? If the show is so well received and it's doing well and it's generating revenue for you, why are you saying, okay, it's
done,
it's done, we're moving on? I don't get that.
Not to get too financial on it, but one possible idea is that they have their talent, for lack of a better term, contracted for X number of seasons, and to go beyond that, they'd have to renegotiate, which means they'd have to pay them more.
Yeah.
That's not an unusual problem for network stuff for the last 50 years, basically, also. A lot of shows have been canceled over the years simply because the network doesn't want to double or triple the salaries of the stars.
So we was watching one called F is for Family, and it's animated. And not saying that they don't pay voice actors as much as actors, but they don't.
They probably don't,
but,
right.
Every season that they put out, I think there was maybe 4, maybe 5 seasons. It always trended when it first came out. It stayed trending for a couple of days. So it was kind of like, it wasn't that it wasn't well received, but it was kind of sad because it was a family show. Well, it was a family show, but it wasn't like watch it with your kids kind of family show. But it was about a family in the 70s. Yeah. So it was kind of cute. But it's like, I don't get it. If something's trending every time you release a season, then why are you canceling it?
Okay. Not to get too financial on it. Again. But for something to be trending for a couple of days, honestly, Netflix can buy that. They can literally go pay people or give people something to make them go make noise about something for a couple of days. I mean, that's how influencers make money, honestly.
Yeah.
You just contract the influencers to raise some stink about something for a few days. That gets it trending, and then it looks like it's a big hit, even though people stop quote-unquote watching it after the first couple of days.
I think sometimes it gets to a point of, well, where do we go from here? Especially with that F is for Family, you kind of saw the main storylines played out, so it's kind of like, well, what the hell do we do now? We used our funny stuff,
Right. It ran its course, and they cancel it, and they come up with 14 other things to replace it. Because honestly, that's how I've always viewed the Netflix thing anyway, is yes, you'll see every year you'll see 5 or 6 different things on Netflix that seem to do really well. What you're not seeing is the 50 or 60 other things that they put out that didn't do well.
Yeah.
You put out enough stuff and some of it will stick, I mean, kind of just like the old days. Like, did I mention that I'm cynical this evening at all yet? Had I mentioned that?
No.
You officially. Well, and that kind of brings up something different, but kind of the same. You talk about training for a couple of days. To me, that speaks of why you shouldn't release an entire season in one fell swoop, like 7 or 8 episodes, because everybody's going to binge watch it and then talk about it for a couple of days and it's gone. Yeah. As opposed to what Disney and some of these others are doing. Like right now, we were talking about Book of Boba Fett before we started. It's a new episode every week, and so they're talking about that episode for 2 or 3 days. So by the time it dies out, the new episode's about to come out. So it's always trending.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes, but
hey,
sometimes
what do I
that can
know?
be a nail in the coffin for a show for me. I was all excited about the new season of Dexter. And HBO, they put it out one season or one episode at a time. And it was like, okay, I'll wait until there's a few episodes and then I'll watch it all. I still haven't watched it in the season just ended. So it's kind of like I guess when I have time to watch TV, I want to binge what I want to watch at that time. To me, sometimes that's a little too much to ask for me.
Right, and the deal is that
week.
eventually it'll pop back into your radar once the thing's over, and you'll just watch the whole thing. I mean,
yeah, but I've lost a lot of good shows that way.
Well,
there's some that it was like, I don't know why I quit watching that because I enjoyed that, and
ADD is a bitch, I believe, is something that somebody very wise told me once.
Well, and sometimes it was kind of screwy because Netflix won't get the whole season of things that I like watching, like Arrow and Flash and that kind of thing. Sometimes it was a couple of seasons behind because CW had it over here and you could watch it over here, but you had to watch it with commercials and everything else because it's CW. And
you're like, F that noise.
Right. You're already asking me to sit down for 45 minutes, All
right, don't push your luck.
Right. And I usually opt out of commercials. I'm just not, I'm not your target audience. So, yeah. So there's been some good shows I've lost that way, though. And then it's hard to get back into it because you're like, well, damn, now I'm going to have to watch season 1 and 2 again, and it ain't worth it. Wasn't that good.
Ouch. Well, then maybe you didn't need to watch season 3 anyway if it wasn't that good in the first place. So
yeah, maybe I didn't miss anything.
Right. You're not losing. You got your moment of entertainment out of it. It's fine. Let it go. Find a new moment of entertainment. That's all.
Yeah. Found something else.
Mm-hmm.
And good luck.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
She's not used to saying that, but anyway.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You can tell she's sick.
Mm.
Okay, Mikey.
Okay. So I finally broke down and did it.
Oh, Lord.
Yep. I watched the Sparks Brothers.
Ah.
That was a really entertaining documentary.
It was.
Which I can't say I'm surprised by because look who directed the damn thing. It's apparently Edgar Wright's first documentary, which one I find a little bit surprising because I thought in terms of the documentary itself, I thought it was handled really well. Especially given the length. It was kind of a long documentary, which granted, there's a lot of stuff to talk about there. Those guys have been doing what they do for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been changing their own style like every couple of years for the whole 50 years they've been doing what they're doing. So that kind of inherently makes this interesting and also kind of drags out the length a little bit. Um, don't get me wrong. It is entirely worth watching. It is very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, these two guys, Russell and Ron Mael, are really interesting guys. They're really interesting people. They've done a lot of interesting stuff, and it is and honestly, they're entertaining as hell when they're on camera.
Yeah.
They're funny. They appear to be very smart, and they're good at what they do. Also, they kind of appeared to enjoy being interviewed for this, so there's always that. But yeah, it's a really good documentary, and yeah, it's a really interesting story too. So it is definitely worth checking out.
I was surprised with some of my music that I listen to. Um, I can't. It's been a couple of weeks now since I've watched the documentary, but it was bigger names in my music, and it was like, why have I not heard of this band before?
See, I have a theory about that. I mean, based on all of the stuff in this documentary, they were really big in Europe for a while, and they've kind of maintained a pretty good sized fandom in like the LA area, but they don't really seem to have broken out beyond that, which sounds like the weirdest damn thing to say. Because
No.
I mean they friggin' owned Europe for several years and
Right.
honestly lost it and got it back again. So they did it more than once in Europe. And they've been like really steady in LA, but LA is a very different music scene than we have here. And so, I mean, they talked about what was the radio station they talked about? Basically, in the 70s and 80s, they got a bunch of airplay from whatever the major pop radio station was in LA. Well, in that time frame, you got to remember what we had here, and it was not pop radio stations. That was
No.
kind of the era of album rock. And so what we had was the Zoo and Q102. They weren't playing pop. So
No,
we would
they
not have
weren't.
heard, they would never have played Sparks for any reason whatsoever. And I think that's why we didn't really why we didn't get them here for the most part. I mean, I think they probably came through and played shows here locally, and there was probably some people that went to see them and all. I mean, I wouldn't take any of that away from them, but they weren't like big like they were in LA.
Right. And they weren't as big as the underground stuff we were getting.
Right, and there was just not the same style as the
Yeah.
We were getting a different brand of underground stuff.
Yeah.
We were getting a different genre, honestly. What we were getting was very different. I mean, the music scene in Dallas in the 70s and 80s was really kind of unique. There is I wish I could remember it. I didn't even think of this until just now. There's a documentary. They did a documentary. I think it was PBS. I think it was the local PBS station did a documentary on the music scene, the live music scene in Dallas in like the mid to late 70s and into the early 80s. And it's really interesting. And it's names that we've all heard around here. Not all of them are really all that famous beyond this area, but
Yeah.
I mean, you get a few names that you hear. I mean, obviously Stevie Ray Vaughan was a big part of that. They talked about him quite a bit in that thing. They talked about Freddie King. I mean, Freddie King is a name that maybe not everybody recognizes, but I mean, people came from all over the world to see Freddie King play.
Yeah.
But he lived here in Dallas, and he stayed here in Dallas. He didn't travel. He didn't go out on the road that much. He would play gigs here, but that was about it. So yeah, I think it was just a different scene, and that's why we kind of never got much exposure to them here.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
No, you're probably right. See, I'm thinking at the time that they were, I don't know. Most of the stuff I was listening to out of Europe was punk, and they didn't fall into that.
Yeah, no, not even for a minute.
But they reminded me of, like, They Might Be Giants, that kind of thing. The weird visual videos that they would put with their music and stuff, and
yeah, see,
I don't know what you'd classify.
And I got kind of not a really, really strong, but at least a noticeable Zappa vibe.
Yeah, for sure.
They're doing kind of the same sorts of things. If they're doing it an entirely different way, they're doing kind of the same. It's kind of the same idea. I thought.
Yeah. You're more on with Zappa than I am with They Might Be Giants.
Oh well,
sure.
They Might Be Giants came later, and it's not that different. I think it's a natural extension of both.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense.
Definitely influenced.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the names that we're talking and stuff was definitely heavily influenced by them too.
Oh yeah. Just quite a wide variety of people.
Yeah. Well, and after Les had mentioned them, I, Googled who they were, and Robert Smith. Now, Robert Smith for me in the late 80s, early 90s was like God, and even he was like, they have influenced our work so much. We always go and see them, and it's like, what? How did my gods know these guys and I didn't?
Because you weren't in LA.
I should have known them.
Right, and it was Todd Rundgren that basically discovered them.
Yeah.
And admittedly, not everybody who listens to this is going to know who Todd Rundgren is. He was a big time. He did a lot of producing in the early 70s. In the late 60s, he was a singer. He had a couple of hits. You go to any sporting event and you hear Bang the Drum All Day. That was Todd Rundgren.
And The Light in My Eyes, or Your Eyes, Light in Your Eyes was a big hit from too.
Yeah, Hello, It's Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was We Got to Get You a Woman probably wasn't as big a hit, and then they just start spiraling off into these other, and in a way it makes sense that they got someone like Edgar Wright to do this because he's got some pull, and so they could bring in a really wide variety of personalities and musicians and stuff to talk about Sparks. Admittedly, Sparks influenced a lot of these people anyway. But to track them down and get in touch with them and actually get them to be on camera, you got to credit the documentary maker for some of that.
Right.
So yeah, it's like I said, it is an experience just to watch the documentary. That doesn't even touch the music.
Mm-mm.
Which is its own type of experience.
Cool. Anything else?
Nah, that's it for me.
Okay.
Other than that, I've had my own brand of weirdness and uncomfortableness around here, so trying not to think about that stuff so much. I didn't have it as bad as Liz did, but it wasn't that different either.
All right, Les.
I'm sorry, I'm crying. I've got two people saying that they watched one of my documentaries and thought it was good. No, I'm really glad to hear that you watched it and enjoyed it, because to me it was fascinating, and I wanted to start looking for these guys just to start catching up on some of their work.
Yeah.
For me, I got on a wild hair the other day. I decided I'm going to watch movies and their sequels. Now, I did not go as far as Harry Potter or Star Wars, but I did pick up a few. Coming to America and Coming to America 2. I've seen both, but to sit and watch them back to back is kind of fun. I watched FX and FX2, which were fascinating to me. I love mysteries.
That was with Chevy Chase, wasn't it?
No,
it was
Brian Brown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Brian Brown and Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten, spoiler alert, from 1980 something. Raleigh and what was Dennehy's name? Brian Brown and Brian Dennehy did not meet in the first movie till the very end. And I thought, I was sure that they had met earlier because Dennehy was looking for the connection of the killers and all this. And that was Brian Brown.
Right.
The second movie, they spent the whole time together. And I thought, okay, they came together in the first one. They stayed together in the second one. And I thought, well, that's fun. It's almost like a buddy movie. The third one, I don't know if I really want to say that I watched it, but I did. Iron Sky. Iron Sky had a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I got to watch these back to back then. Iron Sky was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Sky 2 was horrendous. It was not even, to me, it's not on the level of so bad it's good. And they had a few of the actors and characters from the first movie appear in the second one. And I wonder why. I'm sure somebody needed some money. But who is it? Udo Kier is one of the actors that appeared in both, and I thought this guy had to have a need for money because it was so freaking horrible.
Because why else would he do it?
Exactly.
He's a good actor, but
the rent check must have been due. So
he's a good actor, but he sure does.
He does some really.
He's not. Stuff. He's not really choosy about. Well, he's got to see something in it, and maybe, like you said, maybe a paycheck. But then again, there's a lot of actors that way. You're just like, why the hell is he or she in this film? And ka-ching, gotta be.
I have to agree.
Yeah.
But that took up a day for me to find some bad movies and, just to offset the good ones. And luckily I found them quickly.
Funny how so many bad movies have the number 2 in the title.
Yeah. Like Godfather 2 and some others.
You're gonna start shooting early here.
Okay. Godfather 3. Let's go with that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
We'll agree on 3.
Just
1 and 2 versions of it.
Just dodged a big bullet there. So that's kind of what I spent doing, and I enjoyed it. So, folks out there, listen to me. Find Iron Sky and watch it.
Yeah, maybe take your time on the second one, but yeah.
I did forget one thing.
Uh-oh.
January 14th was the day that Alan Rickman died. Well, it's been a few years now since he's passed away. And HBO released, if you're a Harry Potter fan, like the 20 years later. And like I said, if you're a fan of Harry Potter, it was really good. I've never put myself in a house. I liked the movies, but that was about as far as it went. But they did do a really good tribute to Alan Rickman and some of the other actors that have passed away in the last 20 years. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
You talk about putting yourself in a house. I remember when that was a big thing to do on social media. Mm-hmm. They would say, whatever house they belong to. And Mike might remember this. I said, well, y'all may be this, but I'm House Atreides, so,
House of what?
Atreides.
Dune.
It's a Dune reference.
It's a Dune
reference.
I just had to be a smart ass. I had to be a smart ass about
it. I guess I missed the whole craze of Harry Potter. I mean, I watched the movies with my sister. She had two girls who were really into the books, and I think that helped. So, but I liked it because my sister did. But I didn't know enough to be. I don't know if I'm a Muggle or Gryffindor or what the other names of the house is.
Well, Muggle's not one of them, but anyway. That probably makes you a Muggle, but anyway.
Right. But there was a lot of good named actors that were in Harry Potter, though. I didn't realize it was so. I mean, the focus was always the kids, so I guess you kind of missed everyone around them, So it was kind of, it was interesting 20 years later to see these people, and it was like, wow.
Those movies were a big deal.
Yeah.
And getting into them was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
the books were a big deal.
Yeah.
The books were a big deal, which I think is part of why the movies were. But yeah, they dropped a pretty penny on those movies.
I thought it was interesting because, Helena Bonham Carter, of course, is one of my all-time favorites. She was in there, and they pretty much had to beg her to take the part. And they were like, look, if we just let you be you, can you do this? And she's like, okay. So the guy who plays Lucius, the bad kid's dad,
Lucius Malfoy.
Yeah. He was like half the time, he's like, I was scared of her because I didn't know what she was going to do. 1 minute she's screaming, the other minute she's laughing. He was like, and when she would laugh, he was like, oh man, it hits your soul. But she was never on script with what they were doing. They just kind of let her be crazy and you do what you need to do. And she was like, cool.
Well, the character was crazy, so it was easy.
Yeah. And that's probably why they told her to run with it. You're crazy and you can do this. But she's always been crazy in a good way. So.
Well, I mean, part of the deal is that she's kind of a crazy good actor.
Yeah.
And so that makes it. And she's also kind of. It was a role that she had kind of already been playing for a while.
Yeah.
In various different projects, and so it wasn't a big stretch. And you look at how that character was written, and she was just kind of perfect for it anyway.
Yeah.
So it was just a natural. It just fell into place naturally.
Wasn't she in Boxing Helena?
Oh my God, I haven't seen that in so long. I don't remember.
I don't think she was. I could be wrong. I thought that was the girl from Twin Peaks. That was
no.
Sherilyn Fenn?
Yeah, that was the girl from Twin Peaks.
And what was the guy's name? I can't remember. That was a really weird movie, by the way.
Julian Sands?
There we go. That was a very twisted movie.
Yeah, that was twisted. I liked that
one. Of course you did.
I like Sherilyn Fenn too, though. I was sad when they killed her off on Twin Peaks. Or no, I'm sorry. She didn't die till later on in Twin Peaks. She was Laura Palmer's friend. Spoiler alert.
She was also in, what the hell was the name of that movie? Fatal Instinct, I believe was the name of the movie. It was a ripoff. It was a send-up. It was a parody of like noir movies and stuff like Basic
Fatal
Instinct.
Attraction.
Fatal Attraction. Which was a surprisingly good parody movie. But anyway, wow, were we off on a tangent here? But
yeah,
she was in that. It was good. She did a really good job. But anyway, yeah.
I was gonna say I hadn't seen FX in forever, and I'm overdue for that because I remember enjoying that film.
Yeah, me too. And I haven't seen it like since it was on cable after it came out in the like I said, the late 80s.
Yeah, same.
And I remember there being a sequel, but I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I didn't see it either. So.
Oh, I recommend it.
I'll definitely check both of those out. Yeah. Well, for me, I finished up Sequest in the time that we have been gone. I had enough time to. I was actually further along in the first season than I thought I was, and then watched the second season. And fortunately, the third season was only 13 episodes, so I wiped that all out. Overall, it reinforces my thinking that NBC should never have another sci-fi show ever again. Because I watched this, and then, of course, I obviously did some searching and kind of read the behind the scenes and some of that kind of stuff. And, man, it seems to me that NBC basically greenlit this because they were still butthurt over Star Trek, because they had the original show back in the late 60s, canceled it like 3 times, and finally canceled it for good. And then, of course, in about early to mid 80s, we got Next Generation, and it went syndication, which was a smart move on their part. And I think they were going, well, we need to have something, just kind of go, well, we got this too. So they greenlit Sequest. And if you watch it, you kind of get Star Trek and Next Generation vibes off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they spent a lot of money to do this show. But man, if it had been on syndication, I think they wouldn't have played around with it as much. It would have been screwed around as much as they did, because the first season is really, really tight. I mean, there's a couple episodes that are not great, but as first seasons go, the writing was pretty much there. The cast seemed to have some good chemistry there. I remember watching, especially when I got in the second season, I started thinking about the first season of Next Generation and how I can never watch those episodes again because, boy, it was so inconsistent, writing-wise, character-wise. It seemed like it took them forever to find their groove. By season 3 or 4, they were on track. They were going, and everything's really well done. But it seemed like Sequest had it in that first season. But NBC spent so much money, they decided to move production from California to Florida. And basically doing that wiped out half the cast because they didn't want to move. So they got new.
Is that why the cast turned over so much?
Yes,
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I read, and the new characters they added, man, there was a couple of them that really were jerks or assholes right in the first episode of the new season, and they never got better. And that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. A couple of them I finally warmed up on, but the writing was just so inconsistent in it, and they were doing more. It was science fiction, but the first season seemed like everything, with a couple exceptions, it seemed like it was possible. This could happen. And let me point out, Sequest essentially takes place in 2019. So we're talking about like right now, if we could. But it was the first season seemed so more plausible. Seemed like this could actually happen. And then the second season, they tried to sci-fi it up, that kind of stuff. Some of the characters I just didn't care for. You could see why Roy Scheider was going, "Oh God, this is shit. Get me out of here.
What have I done to myself? What have I done to my career?"
And basically he raised enough stink that where they let him go, with the exception of making some guest appearance on the third season, which doesn't make any sense to me, because when you watch the season finale for season 2, they weren't expecting to come back. So they literally killed everybody off and destroyed the ship, which they actually, spoiler alert, that's the second season finale. They destroyed the ship. But they thought, hey, this is it. This show's not coming back, so let's just, fuck it. Let's kill everybody off for the most part. And then NBC, in their infinite stupidity, says, well, let's bring it back for one more season. Which the poor writers had to figure out how to bring back people that they killed off.
Right, they were dead.
They were dead. So that season premiere was tough. And even bringing Michael Ironside on, and I didn't have a problem with him. I knew he was going to be. He's always been the tough asshole jerk, but if you watch Star Trek Troopers, that's basically the same kind of vibe. He's the asshole, but he does care about his people.
Right. The asshole with a heart of gold.
Yes, that's pretty much what he does in his third season, and it still doesn't help the show.
Right.
If they had just kept the way things went in the first season, I think, and gone to syndication instead of, because they apparently were threatening to go syndication before in the beginning, and NBC just said no, we'll do whatever you want, and then promptly kick off the showrunner, the guy who created the show, which is okay because he left and created Farscape, so
there you go.
But if they had kept things the way they did the first season, I think it would have run for longer. Would it have been more successful? Maybe. It would be less chaotic, definitely. But it's just so sad, because it was such an interesting premise, and that season, and the first season was just, I enjoyed the hell out of. It's kind of one of those, kind of go, oh well. I mean, that's that. I don't even know what to call it.
This was a thing that happened.
Yeah. So I finished that up, and it's funny because I didn't think about it until last night, because I just started this up. I went from one sci-fi show that involves a submarine to another sci-fi show that involves a submarine. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yay.
Show from the mid-'60s with Richard Basehart, which, if you're a Mystery Science Theater 3000 fan, that's a name you should remember. And David Hedison. I'm just starting off. I'm only a couple of episodes into the first season, but I'm digging what I've seen so far. So I didn't intend for that to happen, but I I saw that it was available for me to kind of check out, and I said, "What the hell?" And I watched the first episode. And I'm like, "Okay, I want to check this out a little bit further." So,
cool.
Go ahead, Les. I'm sorry.
That's when he was called Al Hedison, right?
They listed him as David.
David. But, he was going by Al on a lot of previous movies and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the name kind of sounds familiar, he was Felix Leiter in Live and Let Die. No. Oh God, the first Moore.
Oh, that was Live and Let Die.
Okay, Live and Let Die. He was also in the original The Fly.
Ooh.
So, you and our audience are probably familiar with those films.
If not, check them out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's interesting. It's 4 seasons, about 22 episodes a piece. So I'm going to be in this for a while. But hey, if it's been, like I said, it's been interesting so far. I mean, the premiere episode, they had to go up to the polar cap and let loose a nuclear bomb to stop a tidal wave that was going to take out basically like the East Coast and all of West Coast of Europe and England and all that. So I mean, and of course there's this evil organization that's trying to prevent them from doing that. So I'm like, that's the first episode.
Cool. Sounds like a good start.
I was like, okay, well, where do we go from here? so we'll see.
I would like to find the original movie and watch it because that was so good.
I've seen that one a couple of times with Walter Pigeon, Barbara Eden. Who else was in it?
James.
Let me look up
English actor.
Walter Pigeon, Joan Fontaine, Barbara Eden, Peter Lorre, Robert Sterling, Michael and Sarah, which if you're a Batman the Animated Series fan, that's Mr. Freeze. Frankie Avalon, Howard McNear. That's not maybe a name you're not familiar with, but if you watch Andy Griffith, that's Floyd the Barber. And he plays a congressman, so it's a different
role, huh?
Yes.
Cool.
So I mean that's a nice cast, and it's a good movie.
Yeah.
And Walter Pigeon, if that name's familiar with you, Forbidden Planet.
Right.
Yeah. With Leslie Nielsen. And I'm blanking on her name.
And
Anne Francis.
Yeah.
Anne Francis, Leslie Nielsen, Walter Pigeon, and Warren Stevens as Doc.
That is another really good movie.
Yes. And if you've not seen that, you need to see it.
Yep.
So you got a list to watch.
Yeah, no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are all going away with homework here. Jeez.
All right. Before we get into this week's discussion, I think it was mentioned earlier, we do have a Discord that y'all are more than welcome to join us. Sign up is free. The app is free, and it's available in all the stores, or you can just go to discord.com and download the app there. We have an invite on our homepage, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. We post a lot of news items. We post funny stuff, post music videos and trailers. I just posted the trailer for the Moon Knight series earlier today, which looks interesting. We'll see how it goes with that. We try to have some fun activities there. We'll do like movie nights or something along those lines. So you are more than welcome to come join us. We have a lot of fun with it. And there you go.
Yeah, come check it out.
Okay. For this week, we wanted to celebrate the 40th anniversary, which actually the 40th anniversary occurred on the 11th. But, we were going to talk about it earlier, but things changed, schedule changed, and that kind of stuff. 40th anniversary of The Joy of Painting, and our introduction to Bob Ross. This lasted for 26 seasons or series. I believe he called them series. Or every week. I'm sure y'all are familiar with the show. In 20-something minutes, he would create an incredible painting and made it look so easy. So with that, we are going to discuss a little bit about the show and the impact and the popularity. And, of course, I'm sure we'll talk about the documentary that came out last year. So, but let's go ahead and talk a little Joy of Painting. Who would like to start off?
I guess the prime of Joy of Painting was the 80s. During that time, my
you were a child.
I was. My dad was probably he was a huge Bob Ross fan. Both were in the Air Force. I think they both kind of did the same thing in the Air Force kind of thing. So it was my dad actually gave up his arts degree when he went into the military. So it was something he always did, but I don't know if he got a degree in that or not. So 80s, my dad had the Bob Ross perm, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
Yeah. I think for me, I was the baby of the family. For me, art was the way that I connected with my dad. My other sisters were musically talented, which he was too, and they always kind of clicked with that, and I played the drums.
You couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, huh?
Right. Yeah. So art was that one way we could, understand each other, I guess, So I watched a lot of Bob Ross with my dad. There's just something about the way, even if you've never picked up a paintbrush in your life, you would enjoy watching Bob Ross. He's got that very cool tone to his voice. He never raised his voice. There was never any accidents. There were happy mistakes or happy accidents or whatever he called them. Everything had a rhyme and reason, and he just made it look so easy. For the talent that the man had, he was very good at putting it down to a preschool level without making you feel like he put it down at a preschool level for you, I've through my lifetime, I have been through several watercolor, pottery, all kinds of things. I've never listened to somebody teach the way that Bob Ross did. He was teaching you how to paint, but you really didn't feel like he was teaching you how to paint. He was talking to you, You had mentioned the documentary. I liked it, but the last probably 15, 20 minutes was very hard to watch. And that's when they go into the people's lives that he touched when he passed away. People all over had stories of how it probably nothing to even do with painting, but one day they were in a bad spot in their life and they just happened to turn the TV on and there was Bob. So it was that was tough, Like I said, I've always liked him, so I don't like the death part of that, of course, but I hope that when I pass on, people are half as kind as their memories as they are with him, Big impact.
Yep.
I never could get the hang of the paintbrush, though. I was better with a pencil. I'm the kind of person I have to map it out. And if I can map it out, then I'm good. I can do it. I can paint it, watercolor, whatever, but I have to map it out. He's not about mapping it out. He's about, as my dad called it, go where the canvas takes you. I never understood that. It was like, well, it's a canvas. It's blank.
Well, and it's the kind of thing that's more obvious to some of us than it is to others, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not something you necessarily learn. That's more of a that's where the distinction between skill and talent comes in.
Right.
I mean, that
Very
going
true.
where the canvas takes you is the talent part of it. And we all have varying degrees of that, but yeah, some of us definitely have more than others. And that's cool.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you can't learn how to do it. It doesn't mean you can't learn how to paint. It just means you may have to take a slightly different approach, and that's fine.
Well, and that was the cool thing about Bob Ross. Who cares if you can't paint? Do it anyways.
Right. He didn't.
This is your world and how you're making it, and if you want it to look that way, that's the way it looks. Nobody's going to tell you differently.
Right.
Yep.
That's what makes it your painting, and that's cool too.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. Yep.
And my dad was good at going where the canvas told him, but mine, I just used the pencil.
Right.
I drew it out.
Yeah, that's the big thing with Bob is he was never negative.
Nope.
You did this differently than what I did. That's okay. That's all right. It's fine. This is your painting. If you're okay with it, then that's fine. That's awesome.
Looks cool your way too.
Yeah. The whole thing of there was no mistakes, but there are happy accidents or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That's.
Little accident.
I mean, there was one time where that was joked about, but now it's not. It's amazing to how encouraging he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that seemed to be the whole purpose.
Yeah.
Of his show was to encourage people to get out there and try it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just have fun.
And then when they would send pictures to him, and he showed on the show, and he's like, "Look at these. These are amazing." And
he made a lot of successful people who never even knew they could paint.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're selling them, and
Yep, because his whole deal originally was, the reason he did the show was to get himself out there, so that it was basically to sell seats at his training, at his classes.
Yeah.
Which, hey, that's great, that's fine, that's totally understandable. It turned into a way more of a cultural phenomenon than I think he expected it to, but that's okay too, right? That's just another happy little accident.
I don't think he realized the effect that he had. Yeah, your paintings, cool, they're beautiful, but it was more of him that he was selling, If if that makes sense. I don't know. It did.
I think it makes sense. I'm not sure it came out right, but
No, yeah.
that's okay.
Well,
I think we get what
I
you're
don't think
talking
he
about.
realized how successful. Well, watching the documentary, his son said he didn't realize how successful he was. I think he thought more people liked that he could paint, and what people liked was him. The experience of being around him or listening to him or watching him. You know, it was more of a him phenomenon than look at this beautiful landscape I'm painting. You know, he sold himself instead of a painting to you.
Well, and I think the way they worded it was that he was a very charismatic person.
Yeah.
He was a very likable guy, and he liked to interact with people and get face to face with them and deal with them one on one. The whole TV thing, that was him. I mean, a lot of that was him kind of reacting to other people who had done that before.
Yeah.
And doing it kind of his own way. And it really kind of resonated. And then when he gets out and starts actually dealing with or interfacing with people who are watching his stuff, and I think it took him by surprise how many people really enjoyed what he was doing.
Yeah. And I always like hearing in documentaries when you have an ideal of a person, when you hear they're like, yes, they were exactly the same in life as they were on the screen. And I liked hearing that about Bob.
And you almost never hear that.
Yeah.
But
Never.
So
Yeah.
they did talk about it in this. But yeah, I feel a little weird about this. I never got into Bob Ross. I knew who he was. I knew what was going on. I knew about the show. The show was on all the time.
All the time.
But it wasn't really on in our house. Nobody in our house was really that interested in art, and so it kind of just didn't click. It wasn't that I wasn't aware of kind of the for lack of a better word, phenomenon. But it wasn't my thing, and so I learned more about him way later in life than I did while he was on TV all the time.
Yeah.
So it was, I was never really all that artistic either. I was the nerdy kid. I was doing other stuff. I read a lot, so I was more into books and authors and stuff like that, and like I was more into fantasy and science fiction.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me. I could look at the art in a fantasy or science fiction book or wherever, or TV show or movie or whatever, and I could appreciate that. It never occurred to me to try to make it myself. I've made jokes at work because I work with words, but I remember the job I'm working at now. I even mentioned in the interview for that job that I am not the guy who has 5 novels partially written in a desk drawer at home. I'm not that guy. I am not interested in creating things. It's never been my thing. So
Yeah.
I am consequently too boring to be of interest for this particular.
So you're a chartered accountant.
I'm a chartered, yeah, exactly.
He's in the Muggle house.
we got a Monty Python reference in.
I had to sneak one in somehow.
For me,
yeah, go ahead, sir.
I'm just going to say, I'm like Mike. I knew of him, but actually I knew more about him through comedy sketches that programs would make of him.
Yeah.
So I didn't follow him, had no idea what the true thing was, I just knew of the comic parts that were presented and not his true life. These were just stupid things that comedians decided, let's make fun of Bob this week. And they'd go off on a tear. I did know of him from the documentary, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that was really my first knowledge, my introduction to Bob Ross.
I knew of him back in the day. I didn't go out of my way to watch the shows, but I saw them here or there, that kind of thing. I don't remember, if anything, I probably remember the man who taught him, Bill Alexander. I remember seeing some of those shows, which were obviously prior to The Joy of Painting. Mm-hmm. So I kind of knew of him, and yeah, I knew that the stuff that was always made fun of him, the perm, the happy trees and happy clouds and all that stuff that got, that everybody kind of made jokes about, that kind of stuff. I knew all that kind of stuff. I really hadn't watched a lot of the shows until the last several years, where, I mean, you talk about him being a phenomenon back then, during like the 90s and all that, late 80s, the early 90s. But now, oh my God, probably 10 times, if not more. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a Twitch channel that shows his shows. All the shows are on YouTube. I know Pluto has a channel just that shows all his shows. The shows are everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's almost like you can't get away from them. And I've watched a lot of those over the last few years because I'm mesmerized. I'm sitting here, like I said, in literally 25 minutes or so, he goes from nothing to have a completed painting. And that's
with no editing.
With no editing. I mean,
all right, all in one take.
It's all in one take. And the thing that some people may or may not know, that is the second time he's done that painting. He would do a painting, just trial, and then he'll have it to the side. And if you watch the show, sometimes if you watch closely enough, you'll see him look off camera. Mm-hmm. He's looking away from his painting he's working on. He's looking at the painting that he completed prior toward filming. He's using that as his guide of what he's doing. So that's the second painting. And then after that, he will do a third painting at a slower pace so they can take pictures while he's painting, so to be put into the art book that he'll be putting out later at some later point. So he literally does that painting 3 times in a certain number of, a couple hours or some such.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind.
Well, and there's not a lot of his original paintings around, because although he did so many years and seasons of the joy of painting, when he got done with a painting, he wiped them clean. He reused canvases like over and over and over and over again. So a lot of his work was just erased,
Well, that I did not know. I thought he had donated some of them to PBS.
Some of them, if they asked him.
Okay.
So if he knew he had, a painting to do for charity for them, he would keep his paintings. But most of his paintings, he reused as canvases. Okay. He used what they call a wet on wet technique. Right. Mm-hmm. It's you keep your background wet so you can build and pile your paints up. Well, right. He used oils, and oils take forever to dry. Most of the time, you can go back the next day and still fudge it with your oil paintings. So He used oils, and using the wet on wet technique was easier to clean off when he got done with them. So most of his paintings were cleaned.
Wow.
Interesting.
And the ones that he gave as gifts, I knew this before the documentary too. Most of the ones that he kept in his home and that kind of thing that he did, after his death, his estate was sued and all of that was taken away from them. So if you have a Bob Ross, they're very hard to authenticate nowadays because of all of the, and to me, it's kind of one of those things, I don't know, are we going to get into the documentary? I didn't know the dirty side of Bob until they started making this documentary and everything. I didn't know that he didn't own his name. I didn't know that he didn't care about the business side of it. And as a fan of Bob Ross, it kind of makes me feel bad that I have pops of him. I have T-shirts, coffee mugs, you name it, I have Bob Ross on it. And it kind of makes you feel dirty afterwards. But his son was the one who should be making profit off of this. It's like he understands and he's not mad at people for having the coffee mugs and pops and that kind of thing because they loved his father so much. He's definitely mad at the business side of things, but he doesn't hold that on the fans, So I don't feel as dirty, but it does kind of give you a sickening feeling when you think that you're supporting something and then you find out that, oh no, this is totally against what you're supporting.
Well, you're supporting somebody, but you're supporting the people who made this whole thing possible. Now I hadn't seen the documentary, but I had heard all of the stuff before it came out.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why I didn't want to see it, because I didn't want to get pissed off to hear about this.
To me, watching on the documentary, I will say this: if you're a fan of Bob Ross, you have to go into it with kind of you can't be biased. You can't let your love for Bob be right there. Now, there's some hurt feelings on both sides, which of course the documentary only shows you one side of that hurt. And I think there was things they should have left out of there, like the affair that was never permanently, we have pictures, this is solid proof. It was always kind of a hearsay on, a whisper kind of thing.
It was entirely I'm pretty sure this happened.
Yeah.
And with no substantiation whatsoever.
Right. But you have to remember the guy who's telling you this story basically had his name robbed from him. He can't even put his own name on a painting. That's bullshit, But as much as that side of it's bullshit, you gotta leave out the fiery darts. And I think the affair that they brought into that was exactly that. That was him. I can say this because, because you have royally fucked me.
Because they refused to respond with anything other than legal action. Yeah, the thing to keep in mind, if you're a Bob Ross fan and you're wondering whether to watch this, is that this is Bob's story, but it's also not Bob's story.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be hard to kind of sort it out because it's as much Steve's story as it is Bob's. And Steve is entirely the one telling the story because, like I said, the other quote-unquote side of this is Bob Ross Incorporated, which is the company that now owns Bob Ross. And they did not. This is a lot of this is pot shots at that company.
Yes.
And so it is very one-sided.
But after they get all the way to the end of it and you find out what really happened, that it was the uncle who sold everything, and, when you finally get to the end of it, I think he was actually very kind in the documentary. he could have been ruthless, and other than the affair thing, he really wasn't. It was, this is what happened. This is what my dad said.
Well, right,
You know,
and that's where you get the distinction between him telling his dad's story,
yeah,
versus him telling the story of himself getting screwed out of his dad's legacy.
yeah,
Because it wasn't the
he won't tell you
company.
things his dad said, but he'll tell you, while I was there, this is what I heard.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, he's mostly trying not to make stuff up.
And
I
probably
think he
not to
is.
get sued. You know, with these people, you have to walk a very tight line. I forget the guy they were talking to at the very end of it, but he was kind of like, we sued them before they sued us because
that
it was cheaper.
That was a friend of his that was also an instructor.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So he was like, yeah, and hardly anybody would come and talk on this because the other side is holding lawyers over them. And like I said, you try not to get wrapped up in all of that, but it's like, I'm more out to believing the guy who was like, hey, here's what I saw. It could have been different, but this is what I saw, instead of, oh, we can't hear that side because they've lawyered up. What are they trying to hide? To me, that always looks guilty. I know a lot of people are like, first thing you do when you get in trouble is just shut up. Well, to me, that's the first sign that somebody's guilty, is they shut up, So you do have to keep that in mind too when you're watching this. Their side, they didn't want to put a story out, because they knew what they did was dirty, and there's no way to polish a turd. And a business side, hey, good for them. But from a son side, that's his name, that's his legacy, and you stole that from him. You went underhand and you stole that from him. What if he was a bastard? Okay. And he, a lot of times people find out years later their kid was also an artist like them. So he's trying to make a name for himself, and then all of a sudden he finds out he can't because, oh, dad was an artist too. I mean, that's some bullshit, and that's what they did to him, You can't use your talent because your last name is Ross, and that's what we're selling, is the Ross image. So right.
And the deal is, it's a very complicated legal issue, and I think ultimately the impression I got was that Steve basically couldn't afford to fight the fight. He couldn't afford to win that back in any way, because pretty much what happened was entirely legal.
Yeah.
It was underhanded as fuck, but it was
sad,
pretty legal.
It was totally legal. I think that the uncle, trying to do the best thing, you're up against this big company that owns the art world. In the art world, they're the Disney. Am I going to fight these guys, and am I going to bankrupt my nephew to fight for this, or just?
The impression that I thought it gave was that the uncle just didn't care. He got offered a chunk of money and took it, and didn't really pay any attention to the consequences.
Yeah, and didn't know that.
Didn't realize he was screwing Steve over.
My nephew.
Right.
Yeah.
Didn't realize he was screwing his nephew over.
I didn't pick up any hard feelings there either. I know he wasn't told right away that that's what had happened. Until pretty much the end of their lawsuit, they found out that had happened. I don't think he really held a lot of. If Disney came beating on my door demanding that I sign a bunch of paperwork or I'm going to be sued, I don't know what I would do. I definitely can't find Disney, and I think that's where the uncle was kind of like, I don't know what all this is. This was always Bob's thing. You're Bob's friends. But they weren't.
Bob literally lived in your house for a while.
Yeah.
I mean,
you boosted his career to,
Sure, but yeah, and it's all very shady, and like I said, the the documentary is one-sided because the other side wasn't interested in talking about it. So you have to kind of take a lot of. I mean, the deal is watch it and enjoy the stuff that's about Bob and about the art and about all of the stuff.
Because there's some good stuff in there too.
There is
a lot of good stuff.
And like Liz said, there's a bit at the end which is them talking to several people who Bob influenced and Bob had a big effect on. And at that point, that's those rat bastards. They put that right at the point it was right after Bob died.
Yeah.
And they stuck that in there. I'm like, yeah, they were playing this. They played it hard, and it worked in that regard.
And I didn't realize either until I watched the documentary how covered up his death was. Yeah, I was trying to think, normally when someone of influence like that dies, you can remember what you were doing when you heard. It's like, I don't remember what I was doing when Bob Ross died because I don't think it wasn't talked about.
Yeah, they didn't make a big deal out of it for sure.
Mm-mm. Can't sell books with the guy's face on it if the guy's dead, And
he wasn't an old man either.
No.
He's like 53 or something.
And then to think the last 3 years of his TV show, he had cancer that he was fighting through. Never once showed it. Still uplifting everyone around him,
Right, doing his thing, being Bob Ross at everybody.
Yeah.
And dying on the inside, basically.
Yeah.
It's a rough story.
Yeah, it is. I said he's a good guy. I'm glad he died the way he lived, Not a bunch of scandal and...
Not until later, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the problem that they had when he died, is he so much didn't want to get involved in any of that to where he should have. He should have taken more of a stand and more precautions, thought his precautions out a little better than what
that wasn't him. That wasn't the part
never
of it.
Was. Yeah.
He just wasn't. That wasn't his thing. That's why he had partnered up with these folks, is because he didn't want to do that part. He wanted somebody else to do it. And
he knew at the end how they were. I just don't think he knew really what they were capable of, or he would have put more, Right.
He would have made more allowance for taking care of his family.
Put a trust up for his son to where when his son turned a certain age, got 51%, I just really don't think he thought his brother would do what he did. I think the brother didn't think, and I think he thought he would think about
it. The feeling I got was that the brother was never involved in the process at any point. And so he literally didn't know anything about it all. And he didn't really know who these people were when they came to him and said, hey, here's a check, sign this all over to us. And he saw a check, which was probably bigger than anything he'd seen before.
Yeah. Then they make a point to say that he was asked to speak on this documentary, but he couldn't because of lawyers. So.
Yeah.
And not his lawyers, but yeah. Sad story. Happy life, sad story.
We haven't really talked you into watching this thing yet, have we?
No.
It is a roller coaster.
I think with the footage that they showed, if I was his son, I would be so thankful to have that footage of my dad praising me and being proud. And, there were so many clips they took of him just talking about his son, And that's no matter what they do, no matter how much they take from him, they can't take that from him. His dad was proud of him.
Well, if Steve made a few appearances on the show, and he would actually, he would do some of the paintings, and you also see that there as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're right. It's great. It's great to have that, and you can see that. So.
The first appearance Steve made on his show, he was reading some of the letters that people had sent to his dad while his dad was painting, asking him questions and that kind of thing. So
but there was times where he actually did a paint. Yeah. And
there was times when Bob would paint when he was like, "Boy, my son is so much better at this than I am."
Yeah. You know, it's so funny. You want to talk about how things evolve. I recommend trying to find episodes from the first year or two, because at that point there was actually music. He wasn't soft spoken. He was actually wearing sunglasses or tinted glasses.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny after, you know, because we have this image of what we've seen for the better part of the series, of the very calm and relaxed and all that kind of stuff, and then you see these first couple of seasons episodes. It's just like, who is this guy?
Well, I mean, I'm sure he was probably nervous as hell because he'd never done any of that before.
Yeah.
But then he just kind of just kind of still figuring out the whole persona thing.
Well, yeah, I get that, but
I bet
it's very funny.
Yeah.
Because like I said, there was even music. They even had music on there, which is something I guess was dropped either to Series 3 or Series 4 or something like that. It was pretty early on. But, you know, and then, of course, the glasses disappeared. I guess he was wearing contacts or whatever. Anyway, it's kind of a night and day difference. But once he got to the Ross that we're familiar with, I mean, it was always like a blue button-down shirt and blue jeans and, you know, the perm hair.
Right.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah, it's funny. They even show a couple of scenes of him on like morning TV show type things, like morning talk shows.
Yeah.
And I don't know when in the process that was. I'm sure it was a few years in. But yeah, it's him standing off to the side of the people talking to him and stuff, and he's talking to them and he's painting the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and one of them, he even had Regis painting like he does.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yep. So yeah, even when he's doing that, he's teaching, but also when he's doing that, he's again building that persona. He's becoming he's becoming Bob Ross essentially.
That image. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It would be interesting to go back and watch that just to see the development of that. That would be cool.
You know, about 10 years ago, it may have been longer, PBS started doing a thing where they took like all of their old clips and they would piece together, like auto-tune a song. Like they had Mr. Rogers singing a song. They do have a Bob Ross one. I have to look it up. But during this song, though, with the different clips that they used of him to put it together, you can kind of see the progression of Bob. You know, the hair's a little smaller, the hair's a little bigger. So you can kind of see where he was in his career at that point.
Yeah.
You know?
There you go.
But, yeah, it was pretty cool little song, too.
It is. I believe.
Yeah.
Yep.
I believe.
I had posted that on Discord a long time ago, but I can find it again. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
If you've not seen it, it's a nice song. It was done real well.
They did quite a few of the older classics that way. I think Reading Rainbow was another one that got digitally auto-tuned.
Yeah, I did not know that. I found this as part of one of the marathons I was watching on Twitch. You know, just like it was during a break, they would throw that in there in between episodes. They would show that. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. And it's amazing. I hadn't watched it on Twitch in quite a while, but you know, they would do marathons every weekend, and I swear to God, there's always around 1,000, couple of thousand in the chat room. Mm-hmm. And they're watching this and they're talking and that kind of stuff, and it's like, that's amazing. Yeah. And it may be more than that, but it just seems like it was always a couple of thousand. But it's just, you know, for a show that had been off the air for several years, you know, it's kind of amazing. That's cool. Yeah.
Yep, it's a testament to the impact he had.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
I've watched a couple of YouTube videos where artists take a Bob Ross class, one of his broadcasts, and duplicate the painting that Bob did.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's pretty amazing how they almost do it in the same time frame. There are times that they have to take breaks and things, but for the most part, they try to follow what Bob is doing. It makes it very interesting.
I went to a class that was called Painting with a Twist. And the twist was, you know, there was a whole class of you guys, and it was just a one-night thing, but they gave you a bottle of wine and all your art supplies and stuff with whatever you paid. Well, we went to a Bob Ross one, and I didn't even get close.
Finished off that bottle of wine, though, didn't you?
I think I drank too much of the wine, but the wine bottle we got at the end of the class was really pretty because we painted.
Wow.
But I have pictures floating around somewhere of me with his fro, so. Yeah, not even close. And to tell you about love, I came home and I think Brandon saw how so proud I was of this painting, and I think it's hanging in his room now.
Did he not have any idea how wasted you were when you got home? I mean, come on.
Seriously, why do you have that ugly thing hanging in your room? You know.
But Mom, you gave that to me.
You painted it yourself.
It's yours.
I don't remember that.
Out of all the cutesy shit I've ever done, that's the one they hang on
to. Something that you can call back on.
I think I need to reach out to Brandon and say, hey, can you take a picture of that painting and send it to me?
He said, I probably have one on Facebook because April, you know, I didn't post it, but I'm sure she did.
Oh, sure. Blame her.
Uh-huh.
I blame her for everything.
That's what besties are for.
She's my Ethel.
So much to unpack in that statement. But anyway.
Okay, any final thoughts as we wrap up this discussion?
No, just like you said, if you've ever been curious if you can paint, he'd be the one you'd want to watch to find out.
Absolutely. It's definitely worth going back and checking out the series.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm sure your local PBS station reruns them occasionally.
For sure. And there was some streaming service that's got all of them and stuff too. So.
Yeah, Pluto has a channel. They usually, from what I remember, they may have them group by like maybe themes, or they may just do scattered, like a seascape or mountains or something like that, or they do some other ways. Like I said, Twitch does a marathon. Usually starts Friday afternoon and goes until about noon or so Monday morning. I mean, it's literally all weekend. And of course, Bob Ross has a YouTube channel, and all the episodes are there as well. So there's several different places you could check it out.
Cool.
All right. On that note, we are going to take a quick break and be right back. We are back. Normally we do our weekly picks, but with the situation with distribution and shipping and the lists not really being as accurate as they used to be, we're kind of taking a break from that for right now. So let's go ahead and move on to any special shout-outs or mentions this week.
No.
Not me.
Stay safe.
Yeah, I was about to say something similar. That works for me. Anything from you, Les?
No, I'm pretty much done.
Oh, that's good. No, okay. He's spent. All right. Yeah, I echo what Liz says. Please stay safe. It's
a little rough out there right now.
It's a little rough out there. In some places, it sounds like it's kind of starting to get a little bit better, but it's overall it's kind of bad right now. So please just take care of yourself and others while we try to get through this. All right. We'll move on to our regular shout-outs. First off, we want to thank Pop Goes the Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be with a group of great fellow podcasters. Definitely check them out. We'll have a link in the show notes. I also want you to check out the fine men and women who have been so kind as to spread the word of the fellowship by retweeting our tweets. The best way to do that is just do a search, #PodderFamily, all one word, and just scroll through the list. If something there catches your attention, please click on that link and download that episode. And we hope you have a good time listening to that show, and hopefully you've got another show to listen to. Thank you guys for your support as always. Want to thank Maddie the Martyr for supplying music to our podcast. We'll have a link in the show notes where you can check out their couple of EPs that they put out. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We appreciate your support, and we value your feedback. Any comments, questions, suggestions, complaints, observations, what have you, please send them our way. We would love to hear what you have to say. Our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Or you can go to the website, go to the About Us page, and there's a contact form you can fill out there. On social media, we are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. Obviously, we're on Twitter, @FellowshipGeeks. Follow us there if you'd like. If you want to follow our personal Twitter accounts, Mike can be found @MikeyGeek. Liz can be found @LN_geek. Les may or may not be found @FakeLesWebster. And I can be found @TomTCGeek. And from wherever you download our episodes, if you would be so kind as to rate and review our show, it would be greatly appreciated. Anything else before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
We appreciate you listening. And until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,